How you doing?
Nice to meet you.
How you doing?
Rabbi Fried, we came from Chabad. Rabbi Friedman's on his way from over here, and just that could be him. He should be here any minute. So we're videoing the class. Okay. So we have two guys. We're gonna set up.
Let's see, do you think God is above us and we're made in His image? Or that we all have a different part of God within us? Why, after realizing that Judaism is the right religion, would I still not want to practice it? And how do I change that perspective? Should we do what gives us the most happiness or pleasure, or what makes us feel like we have meaning? Finally, if a person's emunah is based on faith, how do you go about talking about and conveying the idea of God to rational atheist friends? Of course, everybody has a rational atheist friend, right? They're all over the place. Well, the first thing is like this. What exactly is emunah and what is yediyah? Because the Rambam begins with a very dramatic statement that Yesod HaYesodis and Amud HaChachma, the foundation of everything, is Leida, to know that there is an Eibishter and that everything comes from Him, and without Him nothing could exist, etc., etc. But the mitzvah is Leida. Not Lahamin. And that is the foundation of everything. It's a dramatic statement, because if you are going to write about Torah, about Yiddishkeit, about Judaism, wouldn't you say that the foundation of all things is emunah? I mean, you got to start off with emunah.
Nanas, there's some ladies here. They can't hear at all.
Ladies?
What?
I don't speak for ladies. Shalom Aleichem, by the way.
Alaikum salam. How are you?
Okay, so wouldn't the foundation of everything be emunah? Because if you don't already believe in the Eibishter, why would you be learning Rambam? So is the Rambam assuming that you already believe in the Eibishter? And that it's not really the foundation and the yesod of everything? Because you already have emunah? You can ask the same question the other way around. How do you start learning about the Eibishter if you don't believe in him? But then the question can be asked the same way how do you believe in him if you don't know anything about him? Both are good questions, no? So how do you start? Somebody says, okay, I'm ready to start. Where do I begin? What do you say? First you have to believe, or first you have to know? It seems like one without the other can't work. So
First you have to do.
First you have to do. That's a whole other problem. So let's assume every Jew by nature believes in the Eibishter. We'll get back to that. Let's just start with that assumption. By the nature of your neshama, you have emunah. What is the beginning of your function? How do you start being a Jew? Well, of course, you're already a Jew, which means you already have emunah. Now, what is the beginning of your whole avodah? Rambam says the beginning of the avodah is you have to get to know. You have to know the Eibishter. The emunah you already have, that makes you a Jew. Now, how should a Jew function? First thing, get to know the Eibishter. That kind of makes sense because suppose I don't believe in the Eibishter, how do I start? So the first thing is you have to believe. And if I don't, then what? Believe. But I don't believe. Well, you got to start believing. How do you start believing? So I had this intense debate with this teenager once about tradition and so on. And he says, oh, by the way, he says, I don't believe in God. Don't get me wrong. I don't believe in God. I said, I don't understand. What? He says, I don't believe in God. Don't be so shocked. I said, yeah, I don't understand what you're saying. He said, what, you think everybody believes in God? I don't believe in God. I said, I hear what you're saying, I don't understand. He says, what don't you understand? I said, I don't know what you're talking about. What's God? He says, I don't know. He says, so what don't you believe in? Most times when your atheist friend says, I don't believe in God, what he really means is, I have no idea what that is. Most of your friends who do believe in God would probably say the same thing. I believe in God, I just don't know what that means. So the beginning of all function is to get to know, to understand. And what does Rambam say? Very simple thing. Everything starts at the beginning. So all of existence began at one point, at a beginning point. What is that original beginning? What is that original existence? That's Eibishter. Now this original existence, which you can't deny, can't say I don't believe in that. You can't say I don't believe things began at the beginning. This original existence is the source of everything else that exists. You can't argue with that either. The interesting part is when we get to what this original being who created everything and without which nothing can exist spoke to us. Whoa, that's interesting. And that's where Yiddishkeit differs with science. Science also says, in the beginning there was an original substance. And from that original substance all existence came. This original substance speaks? No. No, it's just a particle or something. But a particle that knows how to create the whole world, just doesn't know how to speak. So what is the major chiddush that Yiddishkeit brings to the world? That there's only one God. Maybe. But that the world learned a long time ago. What else can we tell the world? We're telling the world that whatever is so real that it existed in the beginning, and from it all existence derives, is not a particle. And don't insult him by calling him a particle. He is an intelligent being, and he has something to say. Which means the world didn't happen from him by accident. It happened from him with a purpose. And here's where we run into a problem. Here's where frum people run into a problem. If the Eibishter is the original true being, he didn't have to be created, he exists forever. He is all powerful and perfect. Why would he create a world? In the beginning, he was the only existence. He was everything. What's wrong with that? Here we're trying very hard to understand how Hashem is Echad. He was Echad. Perfectly Echad. Why did he ruin it? It was so perfect. Now we're working so hard and we're looking forward to a time that Bayom Hahu Yihiyeh Hashem Echad U'Shmo Echad. That's how it was in the beginning. It's in Kabbalah. Hayahu U'Shmo Bilvad. That's how it was. Then he creates a world. We end up in a mess. You have a Yetzer Hara. You eat from the wrong tree, and look at the mess we're in. So, let's just follow the Seichel. The Eibishter is an infinite, powerful existence. He created the world. If he's infinite and powerful, he has Seichel also. If he has Seichel, intelligence, then he created the world intelligently, which means with a purpose. If he created it with a purpose, then he is, I think we can assume safely, still in the middle of the project, because the world is not what he wants it to be. And that's why we say, Bayom Hahu Yihiyeh Hashem Echad. And what is he now? Now he's in the middle of a project. And until the project is complete, he's not complete. But he will, there's no doubt, that there will come the time, and there will come that day, and the Eibishter will be Hashem Echad U'Shmei Echad, because he never fails. But right now, his name is not complete, and his throne is not complete. If we say that he created the world with a purpose, and that purpose is not yet fulfilled, can we still describe him as perfect? This is where people get very confused. Is he perfect and therefore can't need anything? Or does he need something, and when that something is completed, then he will be perfect? Which way does it go? So think of a scenario like this.
Please, a little bit louder.
If your mother asks you to make tea, to bring her tea, 3 times a day, every day, and you do, for 50 years, and then you find out that your mother never drinks tea. She never drank the tea. She doesn't like it, she doesn't need it, she never drank it. So you ask her, what was that all about? She says, I don't need tea. What do you think, tea is so important to me? I don't need tea. I don't like tea. The reason I asked you to make me tea is to give you an opportunity to get closer to me. Is the same thing true about Torah and mitzvahs? God tells us that we should keep kosher, we should daven 3 times a day, we should put on tefillin, etc., etc. He needs me to put on tefillin. No, he needs me to put on tefillin like my mother needs tea. He doesn't need tefillin. He wants to give us an opportunity to get closer to him. So if you put on tefillin every day for 50 years, you will get closer to him. Is that possible? If you think about it, a mother who asks you to make tea which she doesn't drink and doesn't need is not a good mother. It's terrible. Imagine you find out that your mother kept you busy doing something she doesn't need, but when she really needed something, she asked your brother to do it, never you. You feel closer to your mother? Imagine she asks your brother to do what she does need, but she asked you to make tea which she doesn't need. She wanted to let you get closer. Do you get closer to someone when you do something they don't need? In fact, if I wanted to keep you out of my life, what would I do? I would tell you to make tea and then not drink it. So you're making tea, I don't drink the tea, I've kept you out of my life. And when I do drink, I don't tell you what I do drink, I ask somebody else to get me what I do need. It's terrible. So a son who makes tea for 50 years is obedient. But obedient is not close. Obedient means distant. You obey someone you can't get close to, like a king. But closeness is not going to come from doing something that your mother doesn't need. Now, when you do a mitzvah, you get closer to the Eibishter. That's true. The fact the word mitzvah means connection. In English, it gets a little confusing because commandment means just obey. A commandment that you obey does not get you closer to the commandant, to the commander. So the word commandment is very misleading. Mitzvah means a connection. How is it that by doing a mitzvah you're connected to the Eibishter? The only way that that's possible is if the tefillin are important to him. And he wants tefillin. And it does something for him. And he asks you to put on the tefillin. But if the tefillin means nothing to him, and it doesn't mean anything to you, then what are we doing? Then what is a mitzvah? A little gimmick to get you to obey? Particularly if you consider the Mishnah says, don't do the mitzvah for the reward. Well, if I'm not getting a reward and he doesn't need it, what in the world am I doing? So the only way you can do a mitzvah lishma, the only way you can do a mitzvah without thought of a reward is if it does something for him. If the Eibishter says, this is really important to me, and if you do it, I'll pay you. And you say, you know, if it's important to you, you don't have to pay me. I'm not even thinking about the reward. But if it's not important to him, and you're not thinking of the reward, then what is it? So when we say that he created the world with a purpose, it means that he is trying to accomplish something. That must be very important to him. If it's very important to him, he tells us how to do it and gives us the key. And the key is Yiddishkeit. So if you're doing what he needs done, of course you're getting closer to him. Another thing, if you're doing what he needs done, then when you say Ivdu es Hashem, you're really saying something. Ivdu es Hashem. If he doesn't need it, and you're doing it only because it elevates you, and it makes you better, and it makes you holier, and it gets you to Gan Eden, why are you calling it Ivdu es Hashem? You're not serving him. You're doing what's best for you. How is that Avedas Hashem? But if he really does need it, and we're doing it for him, that's really Avedas Hashem. So when you do a mitzvah, what should your Qivana be? I hope this gets me to heaven. I hope I get many brownie points for this? Or should you be thinking, I hope this is exactly what you need. I hope I'm doing it the right way and it works for you. Because that's why I'm doing it. There's one more consideration, a psychological consideration. If, God forbid, the Eibishter does not need mitzvahs, and He is giving us mitzvahs only for our benefit, that puts us into the center of the universe. We are what's important. Our success and our benefit and our needs are primary, and the Eibishter tells us how to get what we need. So the Eibishter is like our coach. He's almost like our servant. I need to get to a tachlis, and the Eibishter is there to show me how. So who's God? That makes me God. The Eibishter serves me. That kind of thinking is not only not kosher, it's not healthy. The biggest problem in the world today is selfishness that borders on disease. We become so selfish that it destroys us. You become so, self-conscious. You can't really be anybody's friend because you're too focused on yourself. You can't really be married and devoted to a family because you have your own needs. So you hear husbands, fathers saying things like, I've had enough of this. It's time to take care of myself now. I devoted a few years to this marriage, but enough. You even hear mothers saying it. There's a name for that disease. Literally, it's a psychological disturbance. It's called narcissism, where you're so trapped inside of yourself that you can't function in a society. You can't function with other people. And eventually you hate it. It doesn't feel good at all. And you can't get out. Because the harder you try to make yourself better, the more you're focused on yourself. It's a slippery slope. So our only escape, our only hope, is that the Eibishter needs something, and his need is much more important than mine, and I can escape from myself by serving him. Actually, if you think about it, we raise children, and we are raised with stories. How do you teach a child values? Through stories. Now, in the olden days, even in the non-Jewish world, let's say 200 years ago, what were the stories that were told to children, read to children, that gave them their values? You've read them, I'm sure, the classical fairy tales. They've been around for hundreds of years. What do the fairy tales say? That there was this simpleton, a simple boy who lived in the country, and he went into the big city, and he found out that the king had a problem, and all the wise men could not solve the problem. And this simpleton solved the problem in his own innocent, simple way. He solved the king's problem. He got to marry the princess, and they lived happily ever after. All the stories are like that. Whether he killed the giant who was threatening the kingdom, or he killed the dragon who kidnapped the princess, it was always something. What was the moral of the story? The moral of the story is, you're a little boy, you're a simpleton, you've had no experience, you're not smart, you're not capable, you're not grown up yet, but if you go and do something helpful to someone who is important and grown up and so on, then you will become a mensch. And then you will get to marry the princess, and you will live happily ever after. Again, the moral of the story is, if you want to be a mensch, find somebody really important and do something really significant, and then you become a mensch too. Otherwise, you're always going to be a little boy. What are the stories that children read today? It's never about a simpleton who serves a king. It's always about Superman. A Superman who needs nobody. He is the best, the strongest, the smartest, the quickest. Superheroes. You're never told that in order to become a mensch, you have to serve somebody. Your first message is, you can be Superman too. Just don't jump out of windows yet. You can be a superhero. You are a superhero. Makes kids crazy. It's not a good message. In Jewish life, what are the stories we are raised with? We're raised with the story of Rabbi Akiva, who didn't learn until he was 40. We're raised with a story of Hillel, who couldn't afford to get into the Beis Medrash. So he listened from the rooftop. These are not meant to say, you can become Rabbi Akiva, or you can become Hillel. What it's telling you is, there are natural problems. If you overcome them, you become a mensch. Not a Rabbi Akiva, but a mensch. I know among Chassidim, there are of course stories about the Rebbe, or the Alter Rebbe, or the previous Rebbe. But then there are stories about Chassidim. How great a chassid was, how loyal, how devoted. If we hear stories only about the Rebbes, what, are you going to become a Rebbe? It's not a good story. Of course, you have to know that there are holy people who are way, way beyond you. But you're not going to become one of them. You're going to be like, what's his name says, a Poshet Tzadid. But knowing how greatness goes is inspiring, but it's not a role model. So, if we can do something for the Eibishter, if we can serve him, then we have an escape from the trap of our own importance. And no one is happier than a person who is busy outside of himself, not within himself. And that's why Ivdu es Hashem is always besimcha. Because if you're working on yourself, you're never besimcha. The happiest thing in the world is when I can forget about myself and do something more important than me. That is so liberating. It's so healthy. It's so happy. So if you see somebody who is frum but not happy, something's wrong. Something's wrong. He's too worried about going to Gehenna or not getting into Gan Eden. He is not serving happily. Something's wrong, because when you serve, it's always with simcha. Has to be. So let's come to a conclusion. The mitzvah connects you to the Eibishter and constitutes a real service of the Eibishter, because he really needs the mitzvah. What does it mean he really needs? You know what infinite means? Neither do I. But it's very big. So if the Eibishter needs a mitzvah, he needs it infinitely. That's scary awesome. If you're doing a mitzvah, you're doing something that God needs infinitely, eternally, forever and ever and ever. And that's why if you do a mitzvah one time, does it count? Can it be important? One time. Yes, it counts, and yes, it's important. How important? Infinitely and eternally important. You do 2 mitzvahs, 3 mitzvahs, or the same mitzvah twice, 3 times. That's 3 moments of infinite, eternal importance. Not to us, to him. So if you can do a mitzvah one time, but you don't intend to do it beyond that, should you bother? Infinitely. But does doing a mitzvah one time make you into a tzaddik? Does it even make you Orthodox? How about traditional? Not even. One time? That's not a tradition. It doesn't make you anything. That's the beauty of it. Halavai, we should do mitzvahs all our lives, every moment of our lives, and never become Orthodox. Or tzaddikim. We should always remain simple. We're doing his mitzvah. It means everything to him, and that's why we do it with joy. If I start thinking, so am I a tzaddik yet? So am I frum? Super frum? More frum? You're more frum? I'll never be happy. And I'm not serving him anymore. So all these titles, Haredi and Dati, and it's so beside the point that it's destructive. A Jew should not be anything besides Eved Hashem. This is not our world. I didn't create it. It's not my plan. I don't have to have tikkun olam. It's not my olam. Why do I need to fix it? He needs it fixed. And I can do it for him. What have I got to complain about? That's perfect. If I start thinking, so am I really frum now? Am I the best of the best? Am I very, very holy and humble about it? This is such a can of worms. You'll never smile again. And you won't have any friends. because you're impossible. Ivdu es Hashem b'simcha means the way you do mitzvahs should be so appealing, it should be so contagious that anybody sees you doing mitzvahs wants to be like you. When people say, you know, I'd love to keep Shabbos, but I don't want to become like those people. They're so serious. They're so uptight. They're so holier than thou. This is not a Kiddush Hashem. The way you do mitzvahs should be so appealing that when anyone sees it, they should say, I want some. I want in. Whatever you have, it's working and I want it. So, the answer to the first question, is God above or within? Both. He is within because we have emunah. And he is above because we don't know him well enough. And we have to climb the ladder to get to know him. So the first thing we now know about him is that mitzvahs are extremely important to him. He needs us to do the mitzvah because he needs his plan completed. He created it with a reason, and that reason has got to be successful. It's got to work. So when you do a mitzvah, you're really moving the plan in his direction. If you do an aveda, you're hampering. You're getting in the way.
What does it mean that Hashem needs a mitzvah if he's infinite?
Okay. Here's another important thing. If God is perfect, and that means he needs nothing and can't be bothered by anyone, I also want to be perfect. Don't we all want to be perfect? If my idea of perfect is nothing bothers me and I don't need anyone, then I want to become like that. Do I? If that's what perfect means, I don't want to be perfect. I don't want to be untouchable, unreachable, not need anybody, not care about anything, and just, what? Sit and be perfect? If you call that perfect, I'd rather not. Unfortunately, people do consider that perfect and want to be that way. Super cool. I am perfect. Nothing you do or say bothers me. Nothing can affect me. I'm great. You ask somebody, you want a drink? They say, no, I'm good. I didn't ask you if you're good. What kind of answer is that? And besides, who can say with a straight face, I am good? We should check up on you. You see just how good you are. What kind of arrogant statement that is. Oh, no, I'm good. They used to say, I'm okay. Not as bad. But you're okay? Let's check it out. I'll follow you around with a camera for a couple of days and see. So if you think perfect means invulnerable, like Superman, you don't want to be perfect. Because if God is that perfect, then he is perfectly irrelevant. Who needs him? He's perfect, he doesn't need us. So what do we need him for? And if I want to become like him, then he doesn't need me, I don't need him. It's horrible. Perfect means in all ways he is perfect. I have opinions, but my opinions are not perfect. He has opinion, his opinion is perfect. Or is he perfect because he has no opinion? That's perfect? I'm kind, but my kindness is not perfect. He is kind, his kindness is perfect. I have an arm, the useless little thing. He has an arm, he can shake the world. He has a perfect arm. I have a mouth, and I can talk. But when he talks, people listen. Actually, they don't. But when he talks, things happen. He said, "Let there be light." There was light. I couldn't do that. So, he is perfect not because he doesn't talk or doesn't think or doesn't care. He is perfect because he cares perfectly, he thinks perfectly, and he speaks perfectly. And he has a perfect arm because when he raises his arm, the sea splits. My arm doesn't do that. So we can't think of God as being perfect by eliminating everything. He doesn't care, he never cries, he never smiles, he never laughs, nothing gives him pleasure, nothing gives him pain. See how perfect he is? No. I see how useless he is. In fact, that's what we call an idol. You make a perfect little statue out of pure gold with ruby eyes. And you worship that? Why? Because it's perfect? It's perfect, but it doesn't see, and it doesn't hear, and it doesn't speak. God is real. So if I care in my imperfect way, he cares perfectly. Which means, first of all, he cares about the right things. Secondly, the things he cares about will happen. I can want and care about something and nothing ever happens. So, it's really, really unkosher to dismiss God as being so perfect that he is irrelevant. And it certainly doesn't make sense to say, God doesn't care, God doesn't need, God doesn't get hurt, God doesn't get bothered. It's just that if you don't behave yourself, he'll punish you so bad. What is that? If he really doesn't care, all we know about him is that he gets really vicious. That's it?